afternoon, folks. So, this live stream may discuss trauma of all sorts to include all types of abuse. Viewers and listeners may find it unsettling and triggering. The guests on our live streams reflect a diverse set of values, morals, and ethics that may not reflect the morals, values, and ethics of the Misfit Amish. If this live stream causes you distress, please seek support from your trusted folks and qualified mental health professionals as needed. With that being said, welcome back. We have a wonderful conversation, and our guest Sam is here because Sam has a little bit more knowledge about some of the history of Amish activism than I do, per se. Oh, we can make it like this. There we go. Hi, welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Sam Miller. I was born and raised Amish. I'm a survivor of abuse, and I left in 1984. And I have tried to be an activist and be there for others that have been through similar things.
Thank you. So, with that being said, so you left in 1984.
Yes.
That's almost 40 years ago. You want to know how I know?
Don't remind me. I'm getting old.
You want to know how I know?
How do you know?
Because I was born in 1984.
Oh my goodness. Hmm. That was a long time ago, wasn't it? I'm trying to
Almost
make myself
40,
feel younger.
almost 40 years. Hey, you're only as old as you feel, right?
That's exactly right.
So, I have this book here. Okay. This book, you want to see which book I have? Because you've
Absolutely.
tried to be an activist. So, can you tell me like some of the things that you've done?
I went to court. I've reported. Um, Fought for victim rights, and I think I know the book you're about to show. They are the true activists and dear friends of mine.
This one,
Yes, that
Amish
one.
Deception.
That is correct.
So, I want to point out something for those who are unfamiliar with this book. In here, in the back of this book, which was first published in 1992, that's what, almost 30 years ago?
Yes, 28. Yeah, 28 years ago.
Something like that. Anyways, so this book tells the story of how this couple was fighting for the rights of their Amish nieces and nephews in upstate New York. However, in the back of this book, there's a part where there's a whole list of court proceedings and offenders dating back to, for example, here's one from 1999, 2000, 1996, 1977, 1965. Case John Troyer from Etheridge, Tennessee. Which he impregnated his own child in 1965. There's more. There's Norman Byler's by the mid 1970s. If you don't know who Norman Byler is, look him up.
Yes.
Or in like 1998. There's 2006, 2000, like there's all kinds of cases in here because they've obviously updated the book to include other cases. Why do I know about that? What did they used to do?
They used to sweep it under the rug, so to speak. They used to keep it from keep the law from getting involved in it, and basically as I said before, they make the victim the perpetrator and the perpetrator the victim.
Which is part of the problem. And
Yes, which is the problem.
what did Dave and Fran do?
They made sure that the public, the DA, they forced the DA basically to take this to court.
Hmm. Didn't they travel to the White House at one point in time to advocate for Amish children to
Yes,
have the rights to have investigations opened?
the White House. They met with senators. They met with state representatives. They met with anybody and everybody that would listen to them, and met with people that didn't want to listen to them either. But they still met
Yep.
with them and fought.
Because you know what? How many times did it happen that these cases just got shoved under the rug and there was no justice? There was no recourse. There were no human rights for Amish children.
There was zero.
Like, it was awful. So they kind of paved the way, didn't they?
Yes, they did. They paved the way for me to fight for justice, even though the justice I got was not for me. It was to stop a particular person.
Hmm.
Because by the time I came around was 20 years later, after
Hmm.
I was
See,
abused.
see, and they also paved the way for somebody like me to exist,
Yes,
to be able to report it, and then for there to be a full investigation, and then for there to be people who were arrested and actually prosecuted. And by
yes,
that time, so during the time that I was going through the court cases, they were running a discussion board. It was called the Amish Deception.
yes,
And that was a place where people could go and talk privately to one another, from Amish churches of all sorts and types. And it was helpful. I've met people that I still like keep in contact with on that discussion board, but the discussion board is long gone because Dave and Fran have retired, right?
yes.
Which good for them. You know, they don't ever have to do anything.
No, because they have was what they have done. They deserve retirement. They have opened the doors for the rest of us.
Yeah. And furthermore, let's oh, why is it starting there? This is ridiculous. We have a slideshow to show you this. So if you want to see what their book looks like, you can buy it online. It looks like that. It was first published in 1992. So that's Dave and Fran. They, I would say, single-handedly created a movement that allows for us to exist outside of the picture perfect stories and farms and the good furniture and
Yeah.
the and maybe it wasn't single-handedly, and I don't know before them. So I don't know of any Amish activists before them.
I don't either know of any before them. I kind of they started. I tried to help them back then as much as I could, but they're the ones that opened it. They're the ones that did the work. They're the ones that did the groundwork, so to speak.
They set the stage so people like us can
Yes,
exist.
exactly.
So then, like, oh, wait, wait, wait. This is kind of important. So, Mission to Amish People was created in 2001. How do you feel about Mission to Amish People?
That's Joe Kime, right?
Uh huh.
I I won't discuss it.
Hey, that's fair. I don't personally, I just want to give you some facts about Mission to Amish People.
Please
There,
do.
in conjunction with the Baptist Church, Mission to Amish People was founded and began ministering to Amish people to save their souls. For these reasons, Mission to Amish People seeks to evangelize and disciple Amish and former Amish.
They have forced. I'm gonna say something, and he may disagree or disagree. They have literally. Well, no, I'm just gonna leave it at that because I don't want to. Let's just say it the way I feel about it. They really did not help like they thought they were helping.
Yeah, that part. That part. I personally will say that in my experience and my opinion, some of the things, like for me, mission to Amish people is not somewhere I would recommend for people to seek support purely based on the fact that they're trying to tell people what kind of religion they should believe in. That
Yes,
to me feels gross. I don't think that, Amish people don't seek to change their religious beliefs. Like, if they want to be Amish, let them be Amish. But
yes,
this whole idea of like we have to convert them to a specific set of beliefs, I don't agree with that. And it's not for me.
because they're
Furthermore,
trying to get away from a set of beliefs.
yeah. So that just feels gross to me. But do you know anything about this book called My Amish Heritage by Irene Garrett?
I have heard of it, but no, really don't know much about it.
I don't know either, but she did publish it in 2003, and I do know that she spoke publicly in 2004 when I started speaking publicly. This there were various newspaper interviews given, some with Irene Garrett, Maddie, and published in local newspapers. Another person was Anna D. Olson. I don't know if you've ever heard of her, but part of what happened then is that there were multiple survivors of CSA who spoke up in 2004.
Yeah,
And then Ruth Irene Garrett also published a book here called Born Amish in 2004. And then I went on Good Morning America 2020. Legal Affairs wrote this article in 2005 that covered various stories from various Amish communities of CSA. These are just things that I know about. Like, if you know specific cases that occurred during this time, please let me know in the comments. I do know that there was an article around 2004, a series of articles about Mennonite and Amish abuse that was run in the Lancaster, what is it, LNP in 2004 as well, I believe, around that time, somewhere around that time frame, somewhere in the 2000s. And then I went and spoke on a panel, and then I agreed to participate in this case study on resiliency. We're not going to talk about that because I can't even. And then they re aired the story. In 2011, Saloma Furlong wrote her book, Why I Left the Amish, where she disclosed CSA as well. Then there was the Plain Communities Task Force. It was disbanded after a couple of years due to concerns that its Amish partners were not making good faith efforts to combat SA. That task force has since been reenacted, I guess. I don't really know how to describe it, but it is what it is. And
they
here's
have
just
they have tried to revive it.
mhm.
How much good it's doing, I don't know.
And then also in 2011, Ira Wagler published his memoir, Growing Up Amish. Do you know him? Have
Yes,
you?
I actually have that book.
Oh, yeah? You want to talk
Yes,
about it?
it's been so long since I read it. I would have to sit down and read it again. But as soon as it showed that cover, I'm like, I've got that book at home.
And then also in 2014, so there we have, let me remove this for a second because I'm about to show y'all another book. So this book An Amish Girl in Manhattan by Tora Bontrager. She published some of the things. If you read inside of it, some of these things were published in 2014, 2015, 16, and 17. And then we have Tears of the Silence. This is the cover today. So the thing about Tears of the Silence that you need to know is that Missy Griffin herself, while she raised a lot of awareness about Amish abuse, and Amish child abuse, she wasn't raised Amish. And she was an adult when she went to live in an Amish community. However, her book, because it became so popular and because it has sold so many copies, has really helped the movement along. Have you ever read that book?
No, that one I've heard. Again, I've heard of it, but I've never read it.
Well, it tells the story of like an isolated family on the side of a mountain with a terribly abusive parents. It's awful, really. But and they dress plain, but it's so different from Amish culture. Like there's things that just like abuse has transcending and overlapping elements, but Amish culture versus like other cultures or like that type of culture maybe way way different than that, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
it does.
And she was dropped off at an Amish bishop's home as an adult. That is so messed up though. Like who would do that? What kind of person would do that? Just drop off their like I don't
That's a
even
good
know.
question. Yeah, that's a little bit different.
Oh, and I missed a book. This book called Letting Go of the Reins by Vicky Botner. It was published in 2013. And on the back of it, the true story of a man who left the Amish and a woman who helped him. After Bill Hirschberger made the difficult decision to leave the Amish, the response from his community was immediate and relentless. Bill was a church member with a wife and child. It was imperative that his soul be saved from hell. If he didn't return, Bill knew that he would be shunned and excommunicated. But what he hadn't expected and what he struggled to upset was discovering the deception and deceit perpetuated by the Amish for generations. So there's that.
And that was a very true statement right there.
Oh, it's
Over the
very
centuries.
true. Yep. Yep. So in 2014, they disbanded. Then we've got Runaway Amish Girl by Emma Gingrich. She was a Schwarzentrooper Amish person, I believe, if I'm
Yes,
not
she
mistaken.
was. She was. I
I've,
actually grew up with her dad.
I've read her book, and I would say, like, for me, it felt like her book was authentic.
Um, I don't have all the facts, but knowing the few things I know, I think it was very authentic.
Yeah. And then we have Saloma Furlong again with another book called Bonnet Strings. And then we have that one. In 2018, the Plain People's Podcast was founded by Jasper Hoffman, wherein on that podcast, she tells the stories of some Amish people and also Mennonites, plain Mennonites, and Hutterites, and plain people. Like there's an episode with Kenneth Kopp, who is plain but not Amish or Mennonite. Like he's just a plain person who doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that one. And then Torah published this book in 2018. Dina Schrock published this book Behind Closed Doors in 2018. Voices of Hope was founded, and they had their first conference. I don't know how I feel about Voices of Hope, so we're just going to leave that there as a fact. It was founded, they have conferences. Missy was on Barcroft TV. That really helped the movement along. Amish Heritage Foundation was founded in 2018. They had an inaugural conference in Lancaster, PA in 2018. Like all of these things like are instrumental because then in 2019 the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette published a series of articles called The Coverings, wherein they tell the stories of various plain people and their experience with abuse. And then I have another book to show you that I don't have in this list, so we're going to go back here so y'all can see this. It's called The Roar of Silence, written by an actively Amish woman. Her name is Esther Beachy. A true story of being freed from the trap of SA. And it's definitely written, this was published in 2019, and it's definitely written from an Amish faith perspective. I don't know if I would recommend it for people, but it feels so much of like what we experience, Sam, is in this book.
I haven't read it, but I have talked to somebody else that has read it, and they really basically said what you just said.
Yeah. It tells you so much about the Amish faith perspective as far as like how they expect us to live with having experienced SA,
Yes.
in my opinion. And it's important for that very reason because it documents that. And then, didn't COVID happen in 2020?
Yes, it did.
Yeah, well, let me tell you. So, also in 2019, Rebecca Hope published Beyond the Brokenness. That dress, that picture of the dress from the back, I just legit, yeah. And then the Cosmo investigation, they published an article about that. And I believe in 2020, I also recorded the very first ever The Misfit Amish podcast. Then there was this case, this horrible case of these Amish brothers who had impregnated their sister, who was 13 years old in Missouri. And I just, you know what? I can't even.
Yeah, at
And
that point, that was the point where because I had kind of put everything aside, and
mhm,
when that happened, that point came it was more than I could take. That's when I
I could
started trying to speak up again.
I couldn't sit back. I couldn't. And that's like that was a pivotal moment. Like for me, so in 2018 I had served on the board of Amish Heritage Foundation for a period of time. Um but then in 2019 I wasn't very active in doing much of anything because I just felt like I just didn't have the energy. But then I was like, well, let me try like this whole like starting a podcast, and I recorded like 2 episodes maybe, very short, like, introductory episodes, and then when that case happened, I recorded this whole presentation about what I wish law enforcement and medical providers would know about Amish people. The thing
Yes.
about it is that it is important for people to understand how to bridge the cultural gaps appropriately. And you don't do that by coming in with this pretentious idea of like you understand Amish culture because you're a social worker or because you're a detective or because you live around Amish people. That's not how you do that. You come in there with openness and willingness to learn and hear. That's
And
like just a
that
fact.
that was a big problem back in, you know, late 90s, early 2000s. They had a preconceived notion because they lived around them.
Yeah.
They wouldn't open their ears, and that's where, going back to Dave and Fran, they opened up a lot of ears for the rest of us.
They really did. And then I also want to point out this real quick, just for the love of everything. When you talk about that being culturally incompetent and the amount of harm that some people can do, let's talk about this book. This was published in 2019. And there's an article in Anabaptist World, or there used to be. I don't know if it's still there or not. I probably should have saved it for evidence. But where Dove's Nest, the organization that Dr. Harder co founded, had received a grant and sent out 40,000 copies of this book. Do you want me to tell you what this book suggests as recommended resources?
Please do.
Page 106. The Sacred Subjects. Amish ministers. Why? Somebody's like going crazy over here. There, stop texting me. Anyways, Amish ministers from Almer, Ontario, Pathway Publishers, 8 booklets to help parents explain the sacred subjects to their children and how to keep themselves pure. That includes the booklet To a Girl of 11. She has a PhD in social work services, and they mailed that out to over 40,000 Amish and Plain homes.
That's the booklet. Okay.
And if you really want to know, I can read you a short passage just to make your gut churn even more. From this booklet, To a Girl of 11, the sex urge, once it is awakened and active in a young boy at the age of puberty and beyond, can become a powerful driving force within him. He knows that he should control his sexual desires, and he may want to very much. He may strive for purity, not only in actions, but also in his thoughts. Every decent girl who realizes this will do her best to help him and not make it harder for him. Even in your own home, if you have brothers in their teens, you should be mindful of this. Do not appear in their presence with night clothes that are scanty. Be modest about climbing up ladders. Be sure your dress stays closed in front. And when you sleep, either be sure your door is closed or you are properly clothed or covered. Your brother, innocently coming upon you and seeing your partly uncovered body, may suddenly have strong sexual desires aroused within him. His intentions were not bad, but he suddenly finds himself the victim of your carelessness and the lusts of his own body. Although he may not bother you, and you may never be aware of the harm you did him, he may well be tempted to sins of personal impurity, which many boys wrestle with. That was mailed, that recommendation, just for vomit-worthy factual information. Just an FYI. But going back,
Vomit worthy is not the word for it, but okay, I'll go with that too.
I mean, yeah, that, everything. Then, at the end of 2020, I did start recording live streams kind of more on a regular basis, and I still do. It's just not on a consistent schedule. But in 2021, Lizzie Hirschberger and Molly May published Behind Blue Curtains. What do you got to say about that? No comment?
Yeah, let's just say no comment. Yeah, no comment. Not right now.
Okay, that's fair. And then we've
I'll
got
I might explain to you later, but yes, you know.
okay. And then we've got Betrayed and Rejected, published in 2021 by Linda Schrock, talking about the Bergholz Amish hair cuttings. We've got the book by Anna Schwartz in 2021 called An Amish Memoir by Plain Anna. Talks about her experience. And then we started traveling to Amish abuse awareness meetings and gave drafts of brochures. We have created multiple brochures. The reason this is important is because I ended up co-writing a research study in 2021. So in the span of like from 1984 when you left, you got out to
Mhm.
now, like what do you see as the single most pivotal moment?
I'm going to say there was really two from my perspective. One was Dave and Fran with the K's up in New York, and then Norman Byler.
Yeah. Why Norman Byler?
Because in that case, the DA really didn't have a choice but prosecute because it was reported by neighbors.
Okay.
And I know for a fact that it was reported before that. And the prosecutor in the area basically said, well, I don't think that's happening. They're Amish.
Oh, good grief.
And once it was reported by an English neighbor, they didn't have a choice. And after that happened, they started doing more in that community as far as the DA and the local police and Health and Human Services.
So they started actively investigating more in that
Yes.
specific area.
Yeah, in that specific area.
Okay. Which kind of like sets a standard of like, Amish people are not above the law. They don't get
Yes.
to just commit all of these crimes against children and walk away from them. And then why would you say Dave and Fran?
For the simple fact that was a very big case, and they really wouldn't. They proved to the public that it does happen. Where before many in the public would not believe it, and there's many in the public today that still don't want to believe it, but they forced it and had proof that it was happening.
Okay. So when you read that book, Amish Deception, it is heartbreaking. I will tell you
Very.
that. It is heartbreaking. But what you're telling me is that they proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that child abuse can happen in Amish homes.
Yeah, exactly. And
And they
I will say this for anybody who does read that book, please be in a good frame of mind. Have a strong stomach, basically.
it's a lot.
Yes, it's there's a lot to digest.
Mhm. And it's also important because it's like they fought for years. They knocked on doors. They
Yes,
said, "Hello, hear us. This is happening." And when you recognize that there has been a history in the US, in the world, in the dominant culture to literally gaslight and disbelieve Amish survivors.
yeah, exactly.
So compared to what it was like back then to what it's like now, what would you say the single biggest difference is?
At the law enforcement, child services are more apt to at least believe and investigate.
I would definitely agree with that. I would also say that one of the big differences that I can tell you from like 2004 to now is that you see a lot more survivors who are able to speak publicly. Oh,
Yes.
you know what I didn't talk about is that the documentary that came out in 2022. Sins of the Amish came out in 2022. We didn't have a documentary back then.
Yeah.
But
And that probably opened eyes.
yeah, I'm pretty sure it made some people very upset. But I digress. What do I know? It's my eighth grade education showing through.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just need to make people, you need to be willing to make people upset, you know?
And that is, for a long time, I was afraid to do that. Now, I don't.
What changed?
Many things have changed. Many.
Okay, but that's very vague. My friend, come on.
Well, one of the main things, and I'll be honest about this, I was very active in the early 2000s, but I had three little boys. And there's, as I said, there's not nice people. And I just kind of disappeared somewhat for the safety of my family. My boys are adults now. And my wife has encouraged me to start speaking out again. So, yes.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, if you want to, you're more than welcome to, you know. And if you don't want to, you don't have to either, because I'm a strong believer that people who want to speak should be able to speak, and people who don't want to or don't feel like they're in the right place to be able to speak shouldn't.
True.
You know what's best for you.
Yeah.
I do believe that. But I will also say this. Oh, I forgot this. This book. Have you heard of this book?
I have heard of it, but I know nothing about it really.
I don't know that I could recommend that book either, because there's details in it that tell specific information about minors, at least in the copy that I have, that I feel like compromises the safety of minors. So I wouldn't
Yeah.
recommend it.
Yeah.
Um, I think that another thing that always stands out to me is that for me, when I started speaking publicly, Sam, it felt like I felt like throughout the court hearings and things, I felt like I was so alone, completely alone, even though there were people around me.
Hmm.
And I think anybody who hasn't experienced that can really understand what that's like when you're the sole person that is considered to be the witness in this case. And I don't know if it was because of I was alone in this specific case and how the community responded, but compared to what it was like back then versus what it's like now is like I would say we've definitely made some strides in the past 20 years.
Oh, absolutely. Because in your case, you were basically fighting not just your community, you were also fighting the local law enforcement, the DA.
I think well, in the community was writing letters to the prosecuting attorney that were horrendous. My
Hmm.
family was writing letters to the local law enforcement that was also, like, horrendous.
Yes.
So Marlene wants to know, would it be fair to say that there is mafia-style efforts in certain communities to shut down those who are exposing what's going on?
I guess you could call it that. Yeah, I guess you could really almost call it that. I mean, yeah, it's they don't out there was AK-47s or 45s and all that, but it's done with words.
Or, okay, how do you navigate this? Back then, in 2004, first I escaped. I lived in one house. I moved to another place shortly after that. About 2 months later, I moved to another place. Not even 6 months later, um, the local law enforcement was following my friends home, people who worked with me home from work, um, and questioning them about my whereabouts because the Amish community was calling them and saying I was doing stuff. So I moved again. And this time I moved like 2.5 hours away. So that's
Eh,
one, two, three, 4 times I moved from February to December. And then I moved
Mm-hmm.
again in March. And then I moved again in May. So in like a year and some change, I moved 5 times. And they were still when I went back there to visit my friends before I went to join the army, before I left for boot camp in 2006, I went out to the bar with my friends. We were literally out at the bar enjoying a drink, and one of the investigating officers walks up and asks to talk to me. And when he went to talk to me, what he said was, "Where have you been?" And he starts questioning me about my whereabouts.
Mm-hmm.
And when I said I haven't been back here, he said, "Well, they're still calling and saying you're doing this stuff." Because the
Like a
whole time they're using so they can call law enforcement, but only when it benefits them. How do you
yes,
navigate that?
that's a good question. How do you navigate that? It's almost impossible when you're fighting local law and you're in the community, other than surrounding yourself with like-minded people that know
So,
exactly what you're going through.
so that kind of cemented it. And I went to
Yeah,
boot camp.
yeah.
And if nothing else, the Army got me the fuck out of Wisconsin.
As the Navy got me out of the U.S.
I'm just saying, I also got out of the US because of the army and I went to live in Germany for 5 years. So I'm just saying, like, here's the thing, you got to do what you need to do to survive.
And people have asked me why I joined the military. I used to tell, and I still, in some cases, I will tell them basically to help me adjust, to grow up, to educate myself. But deep down, it was also just to get away from it all, get away from my past, what happened to me in the past,
Get away
and to
from
say to from the memories of abuse.
because sometimes where you're geographically located can be so traumatic if you're constantly surrounded by things that remind you of the horrible things that you experienced. When you geographically relocate, it can give you a semblance of safety.
Yeah,
I'm just
nobody knows you.
you know you.
Yeah, except for me.
Yeah.
I know me.
Yep. So, anyways, I would say that, nowadays, I feel like law enforcement is more aware of that kind of behavior from the communities.
Yes,
And I think that is a good thing because that in and of itself is there's a it should be a crime and they should have been possibly prosecuted for it because what it's called is victim witness intimidation.
it
Oh,
should have been.
did we talk about the Amish bishops yet?
No, we have not.
I believe in either 2020 or 2021, there was an Amish bishop in Lancaster County arrested and prosecuted, if I'm not mistaken,
No, you're
for
not mistaken.
yep. You wanna do the honors?
No, go ahead. You probably know more of the story than I do, but I know of the story that you're speaking of.
The one who was prosecuted for failure to aid a victim?
Yeah, data victim and failure to report.
Yep. That would have been hold up, hold up. I found the article just now, so let me see. When was this published? 2020, April 22, 2020. There it is. His name was Levi Esch Sr., by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. And that I think is significant. And then another thing is that there's the case with Mike Kaufman and his dad, who is an Amish bishop, who was also prosecuted for victim witness intimidation. And then I believe in the last 2 years, there were three Amish bishops in Indiana who were also prosecuted and went to a bench trial, jury, but I believe bench trial. Um, they were found guilty of victim witness intimidation as well. So it's setting precedents. You're not above
Yeah.
the law. The law still applies to you. I don't care what religion you are. I don't care what religion you practice. All I'm saying is you don't get to commit crimes and think the law should protect you
Yeah.
because you are a specific religion. Stop
It
hiding
doesn't
behind your religion.
it doesn't matter if you're Amish, Mormon, Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm going to name them: Catholic, Protestant, Baptist, Lutheran. That's just to
Methodist.
name a few. Yeah, Methodist. That does not give you a right to hide behind it, and it happens in all religions.
It happens in all groups of people.
Yeah,
I know some people get really upset when we talk about it with Amish specifically, but why do you talk about it Amish specifically?
I speak about it because that is where I grew up. That is what I know.
And because
I'm not going to speak or pretend to be an expert in any other religion as far as that goes.
exactly, because you only know your experience. You're an expert in your experience,
Yeah,
and your voice matters. And we need to have documented evidence of these cases do happen. This is what has happened in the past. And when we talk about the history of activism, I mean, shoot, like I went to Harrisburg, PA this year and gave a speech at a rally on the steps of the Capitol. And there was an Amish survivor who got up and gave a speech at the same rally, actively Amish. All I can say is, like, did you ever dream that would happen?
no, but I'm glad it did.
It
But I
needed to.
do know there are those that are still Amish, and there's more of them speaking out that are still Amish now than ever before. But I know of a few that want to, but they don't dare. And I can tell you of one bishop that he's no longer with us. It's my brother. I had a brother that was a bishop. The last time I seen him, he said, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, I would have cussed you out. He said, but now, and this was like 2 weeks before he passed away, he said, what you and Dave did back then, he goes, I'm happy you did it now.
Good.
He said if somebody else heard me say this, he goes, I'd probably be in trouble. He said, but you guys, I tell you, you guys did the right thing.
Good. Good. We need more people. Because
Yeah.
change happens from people exerting pressure from the outside, and then there's the change makers from the inside who are capable of changing their minds. And oh, the Amish abuse awareness meetings, I didn't explain what those are. They were founded in, I believe, 2019, if I'm not mistaken, by a
Thereabouts.
group of Amish men who travel around, and they put on Amish abuse awareness meetings. Although they may have changed their names now, they do still travel around, and they have information. But the point that I want to make about them is that they are acknowledging the existence of abuse within Amish communities.
And back in 20, 30 years ago, that would probably not have happened.
Yeah. So
At
it is.
least not in the community I grew up in.
Oh no, not even like I. I can't fathom that happening in the communities I grew up in either. It just doesn't seem like something that would have been received.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And I wish I could have got a hold of Dave, but I think they're at home. Um, he has told me that he has had several Amish, and one of them is a minister, just in the last year or two, tell him that they're glad he did what he did, or what he did was the right thing after all.
mhm. I will tell you that at the last Amish abuse awareness meeting that I was at, I carried, due to our generous donors, boxes of 250 booklets of how to report abuse to the front of the room in front of a couple hundred people. And there was a Amish bishop who spoke there, and he came and introduced himself. And it turns out that as soon as I said, he said, "Wie ist du?" And I said, "Ich bin die Mary Byler." And he looks at me, and he started tearing up.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Ich habe so Leben nicht gedenkt, dass ich die auch treffen kann." We used to live in the same community.
Wow.
We used to live in the same community. And he had some very interesting conversations. I've had some very interesting conversations with him since then. But I will tell you, because he did say this in his speech, he is a survivor
Mm-hmm.
as well. He knows. And he
Yeah.
knew exactly who I was as soon as I told him my name.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes we really have to understand that there are people that are good people that are really hurting within the churches sometimes. And
Oh,
that's why,
there
like,
is.
if he wants to be Amish, let him be Amish, but
Exactly.
don't shove abuse under the rug. And
No.
don't pretend that being Amish gives you free reign to do whatever it is without the consequences of committing crimes.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Anyways, so Marlene has a question. Did the military feel safer, or was it more of the same, or just sugar coated? As there is significant SA, yes, it's called MSA in the military as well.
Yeah.
I will say this: the thing about the military is this: for me, the military taught me to defend myself. Secondly, I did not experience military SA. Thirdly, the military felt familiar.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to know why? Because the
Mm-hmm.
military is a high control group.
Mm-hmm.
Thirdly, the military gave me leadership values, which is like, you want to know what those are, Sam?
I gotta hear it.
Loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. So maybe those
Hmm.
values are something that I still try to live by because I feel like they're good values and they align with who I am on the inside. So that's fine. But in the same token, the military is absolutely a high control group.
Oh, it is, which is probably like in my case as well. I felt more comfortable, I guess, because that's where I came from, a highly controlled group. This was just different and
And
a little freer
well, and I just want to
in a
point
way,
this
in a
out.
way, in a way.
The violence wasn't as covert.
Yeah, exactly.
We didn't hide behind the label of being conscientious objectors or pacifists or like
Yes,
non-resistant
exactly.
status. We didn't hide behind that. Like the violence in the military
It's
was
fair.
overt.
You
Overt.
can see it. You can see it. You can see it and
Yeah.
you can feel it.
Hmm. So it felt familiar because of that. It was less for me, it was less troublesome to deal with overt violence than covert.
Hmm.
So
I
there's
have to
that.
agree with that. I have to agree with that.
Like if you're going to be a violent person, show me who you are. Don't lie about it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the wrong thing to say. I probably shouldn't say that. But I'm just saying.
Well, I'll say it. Show me who you really are, not who you want people to think you are.
Yep. And I'll also say this is a lot of times you can tell who people really are by their actions. They can say words all they want to, but if they repetitively do things that don't align with their words, there's a word for that. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I'd like to wrap up this wonderful conversation. Do you have any parting words you'd say to any survivors of CSA out there today?
Yes. Let me just say this. I know I have not spoke up about my own case like I should, but for all the male survivors, don't be afraid to speak up. Don't. I know there's a stigma to that. I have chosen not to speak. One of these days, I will speak and tell my whole story. I'm just not ready to do it. But just speak up. Speak. That's all I got to say.
Because your voice matters. And
Yes.
because when you speak up, sometimes you may find that you're less alone. Because sometimes you can share. Shared pain is divided, it's not only on you. And also because when you speak up, you might find out that you're less alone than you thought you were. You might, but only
Yeah.
speak up if it's the right thing for you to do. But
Yes.
I'm here to tell you that your voice matters. You are worthy of having a voice, and you deserve to be heard and seen. And I'd like to thank Sam for being here with me and for sitting with me through all of this, whatever this was, the history of activism. And I'd like to remind everybody that, again, you are worthy to just exist, whether you speak or not. Have a good one.